Hey guys, my name is Rob Noire.
And I'm Phil the Dreamer once again.
And today we have yet another Hidden Gems video for you. This time though, we're focusing on the NES, the original Nintendo system here. He's being the Vanna White right now, you know? So what we've done here is we've picked out 10 different games that are a little bit lesser known. They're not like the super popular ones. They're not like, Final Fantasy or Mario or stuff like that. But 10 kind of obscure games that are really great and really worth playing.
So basically, yeah, I mean, if you've been an NES child or teenager, you probably don't know most of these because back in the days, it was really the popular ones that we played, the Marios, like you said, the Final Fantasy, the Zeldas, etc. So
it was a little bit harder to find the obscure ones back in the day with no internet, you know?
Exactly, and I mean, some of them are not actually licensed, I think.
Or are you covering some unlicensed ones? You're not.
No, they're all licensed.
I'm going to kick it off here with my first pick, one of the more well-known, I guess, of the Hidden Gems, which is The Adventures of 3D Worldrunner.
Oh, yes.
Now, you've played this game.
So, yeah, I played this game as a teenager. We have actually played it on the channel as well.
We did, yeah.
Which is a great game, and it's actually got a even more unknown sequel, which is not as good.
The sequel is only on the Famicom, though, in Japan, the Japanese NES. But the original one here is on the original NES, 3D Worldrunner. It's kind of hard to describe, but it is actually 3D. Like, they managed to figure out how to do the 3D thing, and there is a mode where if you have 3D glasses and you put them on, you'll see it in 3D.
If you press select, it does change it, and back in the days, the red and
exactly.
glasses, so that's pretty cool,
So this is essentially, it's like an endless runner where you're always going forward in like this 3D world that's rendering before you, and you're just trying to get as far as you can. It also has incredibly catchy music, although the music never changes, so be prepared for that. But it has very catchy music composed by the same guy who did the Final Fantasy soundtrack.
Nobuo Uematsu.
And this is actually by Square, the same company that did Final Fantasy. And this was a game before Final Fantasy.
Yes.
But it's super fun. It's pretty quick. You don't have to invest a ton of time into it. It's the kind of game you play for 10-15 minutes, have a great time, then play something else. I would highly recommend this one. So what do you got for me here, Phil?
Well, I'm going to go with an Enix game. Dragon Warrior, the first Dragon Warrior. So basically, back in the days, it was Final Fantasy, which was Square, and this one, Dragon Warrior, was the first of the Dragon Quest series. So, very fun game. It's basic, but it's fun. You can go at the end, obviously, Dragon Warrior, and you're supposed to face a dragon, etc., etc. But it's a good RPG. It's fun. It's not too cryptic. It's not too hard. So it's very fun play. I would say maybe 20 hours play if you want to get everything. But definitely a hidden gem to try if you got an NES.
So my next pick is a homebrew, and this game is definitely an acquired taste. It's not for everybody, but it does deserve a special shout out. It is Battlekid Fortress of Peril. Now, did I ever make you play this game?
I believe you did.
I might have. So this game, it is a homebrew. It's a fully fleshed out game. Like, this is literally one guy who wanted to make a game, and he designed this. It also has a sequel, but you can order like fully done cartridges like this. Comes with a manual, all that. The thing about this game is it's ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
This might literally be the hardest game I have ever played in my life. But it's that kind of hard game where it's like a challenge, where you feel like so rewarded when you actually overcome the challenges. So that's why I'm shutting out, because it is fun. And if you're somebody who likes very challenging games, especially on the NES or 8-bit era, I would highly recommend it. It's like a 2D side-scroller, maybe a little bit like Mario mixed with Mega Man, but not as good as either of those, I will say. But honestly, super fun, not expensive. You can get like a high quality cartridge. And if you like challenging games, I would recommend it. Battlekid Fortress of Peril by Civac Games.
Oh.
So what do you got for me next, Phil?
Well, I'm going to go with one of my favorite as a child. It is a very known game in general in board games. It is
Okay.
Monopoly for the NES. Let's just say the animation at the time for the game was actually pretty cool, and the game itself was fun. You could play, I think, up to 8 players.
Oh yeah.
So
Multi-tap?
Yes, exactly.
Multi-tap, multi-tap, multi-tap?
Exactly. Of course with the same controller, but yeah, you could change rules. You can actually add some stuff, and it's really fun. There's a lot of nice animation. There's a lot of nice sound to it, I find. And in my view, one of the best Monopoly game until 2000, maybe something like that.
And we did actually play this on the channel, and I will say, if you like the board game, it's a pretty good recreation of it on your NES, and it does allow for stuff like house rules, which not all Monopoly games do, and that really helps mix it up and keep it fun.
Exactly, and the nice thing about it too is that rather than having the board game and, you know, having added the money and everything,
Having to keep track of everything.
it's all on that, and it's pretty truthful. It's pretty faithful to the actual board game, so it's really great.
So my next pick is another game that you have played with me and that I expected to hate, but it's surprisingly really fun.
Yeah.
Yoshi's Cookie on the NES. Now, it is worth noting you can also get this on the Super Nintendo. There's literally no difference. Even graphically, the Super Nintendo version doesn't look like much of an upgrade. So you have a few different options to get this one, but essentially it's kind of like a match 3 puzzle game.
Yes.
And I will say right off the bat, I've played the single player. The single player is okay. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, but the local multiplayer versus is where this game is at. It gets cutthroat. We did a couple videos on this back in the day. We did a few videos.
We did a full one, that's for sure, on the video.
But essentially, you're matching rows of cookies, which are like gems and like Bejeweled or another game like that. And when you match a row of Yoshi heads, it sends an attack to the other player that messes with them. Like, it can blink out the tiles so they can't see what they're doing, reverse, or you're controlling them. But it's just like a really fun, competitive match puzzle game. It's one of those games that seemed really lame from the outside, but playing it immediately will itch that like competitive edge. But again, I will say you want to do the multiplayer versus in this, not the single player. The single player is okay, but the local multiplayer there is really where it's at for this one.
And I gotta say, it's very addictive when you play it with multiplayer.
So what do you got for me next here, Phil?
Well, I am going with another of my favorite RPGs that I actually found out late in my teen years. It's called Magic of Scheherazade. This game is based on the Arabic mythology. So, you know, the Thousand Nights.
Arabian Nights, that kind of stuff.
And everything, you know?
Okay.
And it's really cool. It's an action RPG, actually. You got your action phase on the map itself, a bit like Zelda on the NES, but you also got the RPG element that you encounter enemies. So you also can get summons, magics, and it's really well done and it's really complete. So for the NES, really complete RPG, really fun.
Pretty much everything here I have played before, but I have not gotten the chance to try that one out. So I'm interested in seeing what it's like for myself.
It's really cool, and the music is pretty good too.
Okay, cool.
So what would be your next NES pick?
So my next NES pick is another homebrew. You're going to see a lot of homebrews on this list because I really love the homebrew scene on the NES. And so this one is by my friends at Mega Cat Studios, who are actually very awesome people. They actually gave us some codes for some games before that we gave out to different subscribers, stuff like that. And this game is one of my favorites by them. It's Logjammers. Do you remember playing this, Phil?
Yes, I played it with you on the channel.
We played the demo and then we played the Steam version. This is the official NES version. And a cool side note here, they did a Kickstarter for this game where if you were one of the first so many backers, you could actually get a cartridge made out of wood, like literal wood, because this is a game about lumberjacks. So this is essentially like a spiritual successor to the game Windjammers, which was very popular back in the day and still even has a competitive scene to this day. But this is another game where you're gonna want to play multiplayer on a couch with your buddy versus. And that's how we played it, and that's the best way to play this. I've tried with like the different modes, the AI, but nothing really compares to just the local couch versus of this game, where essentially it's like a leveled up Pong, where you each have a goal and you're playing a character and you can kind of, defend your goal, and you can try and like knock the axe, I guess. I was gonna say ball, but I think it's an axe.
I think it's an axe as well.
I think you're trying to knock the axes into the other player's goal. But the thing that I loved in this game that I thought was so cool is there's also like power-ups and stuff, and there's like a hyper mode where you're going like at the speed of light, and it makes everything so much more fun and so much more intense. Once you've played on that mode, you're not going to want to go back to regular mode.
Yeah.
And again, this is a really high quality homebrew, published by Megacat Studios. You can order the cartridge with a box, with a manual, with the whole thing. And I highly recommend this game. It's another super fun game to play with a buddy. So what's the next one you got for us here, Phil?
Well, this is a game we actually played on the channel as well. We actually did a full completion of it. The Guardian Legend.
This was a very old playthrough, by the way.
Yes.
One of our first playthroughs we ever did.
Yeah, one of the first full playthrough for sure. So this is I would call it action space shooter, I would say.
If I had to describe it, I would say The Legend of Zelda meets Gradius.
Yes, totally.
That's what I would call it.
I totally agree. There's puzzles, there's upgrades, there's a ton of different weapons you can use. The main character is actually kind of a Gundam girl, which is, I'm guessing she is an android, but she's got like a spaceship on her back. Anyway, it's really hard to say like that, but this is great. I mean, the first level that you start with is actually a little bit tough, but after you get through with that, it's really awesome. So you go into the world, you find different enemies, you fight them, you find upgrades.
There's parts of this game where it is like a space shooter, like a vertical shooter where you are this ship, and then there's parts where you're roaming the overworld map, which is a lot more like the original Zelda. But I agree, like, it is a huge game.
Yes.
It's also incredibly tough. The one thing I will say though, you're talking about how beautiful this game is, this cartridge is not.
No, this is just weird.
This is one of those games that probably would have been bigger if they figured out what to make the game look like on the front. I don't know what this is. It has nothing to do with the game whatsoever.
This one, I mean, it takes a little time to get into it, but it's so complete. It's great.
All right, well, my next pick is another homebrew, another special one. And this is one that you also have played, although you didn't play it anywhere near as in-depth as I did. And I will say, this one it's a little bit more just cool to own, but it's still also very fun. And so this is Final Fantasy VII on the NES.
Yeah.
Because, the PlayStation 1 version and the remake are not enough. You also need the NES version. So this game is actually really cool, and I think it's better than the original Final Fantasy.
Really?
So yes, it's literally just a complete recreation of Final Fantasy VII, which was on the PlayStation 1, but on the NES with NES graphics. It looks very similar to the original Final Fantasy on the NES, but with better graphics, like everything's more detailed, and it follows the same plot. You meet the same characters, you fill out your party. It's really interesting. And if you have played the original PlayStation version and you're looking for something a little different, maybe you're waiting like all of us for the next chapter in the remake, it's a really interesting kind of take on it. It's kind of like an homage to it while also combining elements from the original Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy 1. And just, if you're a fan of the series, I do recommend checking it out because it's really cool to play, and they did a really good job of like recreating everything from the original Final Fantasy 7 but on an NES. All right, Phil, so to end off this video, what is your final pick for us over here?
My final pick is another one we actually did a full playthrough on the channel. So this game was ported from a movie, which you might not know, maybe not, or maybe yes.
It's not a super well-known movie, but yeah, it's based on a licensed movie, but they did do their own thing with it.
A movie with Val Kilmer. That's probably one of the more known actor of the actual movie.
So Batman and Robin here.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's it.
Oh, that's an awful game on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Well, the movie wasn't that great either, right?
I don't remember.
It's better like that. But yeah, Willow. This is Willow on NES. a very cool RPG, actually action RPG as well, because they're RPG element, but you also go on the actual world, which is very well done, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's not turn-based combat.
No.
It's live combat. So yeah, it is an action RPG. And yeah, the overworld is great. Like, it looks great.
It looks great. I mean, it's got it's got caves, it's got mountains, it's got really weird enemies. It's faithful to the actual story of the movie. They added stuff, which is actually great. But you see all the characters from the movie, and you see Val Kilmer in his NES form. But it's really fun to play. It's not that hard as well. You're not gonna pass a lot of time like figuring out stuff. Like, it's not too cryptic. The only thing I would say about this game is the password system. The password system is horrible.
Some of these old NES games, to save, because there's no battery save in it,
Yes.
they have custom passwords that basically keep track of like everything that you have. And this one, they went overboard a little.
It was like 30 characters, and there were small
Symbols.
characters, big characters,
Weird
numbers,
symbols.
weird symbols.
That is 10 different hidden gems for the NES, you know, games that are a little bit lesser known, a little bit more obscure, that we would highly recommend you check out.
Yes.
And again, we have a little bit of everything here. I mean, it was kind of heavy on the RPGs because Phil came out of the gate with 3 RPGs in addition to my Final Fantasy VII, but there still is a nice sampling of different stuff here, and all of these are games that I think are worth checking out. So yeah, guys, we'd definitely like to hear down in the comments below if you've played any of these games and your thoughts on them, or other games that you recommend we showcase in one of these Hidden Gems videos. It doesn't have to specifically be for the NES, but if there's any games that you think are amazing that aren't getting enough attention out there, well, maybe we'll be able to help out with that in a future video, because these videos seem to be doing pretty well, so I think we'll do a few more of them in the future. And yeah, guys, thanks a lot for watching. We hope you enjoyed. We hope you have some new games to try out and pick up. And as always, we will see you in the next video. Take care.